Now the moment you've all been waiting for.
I am Nate Riggle, and you are listening to The Way of the Bonfire. Hey, and welcome back to The Way of the Bonfire, my friends. If this is your first time listening, I'm glad you're here. Look, I just want to help more people get the most out of their lives. And I want to bring the world together in more meaningful and lasting ways. And the way that that's done is through curiosity and perspective and being open to perspective so that we can focus on and deepen the connections in our lives and find more fulfillment in our life and in our work. Before we dive in, just a reminder, a rating on the podcast helps more people find it. So if you could go on that podcast page in your show player, whether that be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, that'd be great. All right, let's dive in. I'm super excited about this episode, and it's personal to me in a lot of ways. We're coming up on episode 50, so some of this is going to be a review, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into a few things. And so here's the 3 things that you can expect. First, I have a question for you to think about, and then I want to define the problem that we all seem to be running into more and more in our modern life. And then I want to share the story of the wild quest that I have been on purpose and the wandering path that I've taken to overcome this problem. And then I want to share how I want to work with you and others to rise above it even further together. All right, here comes the question. Do you ever struggle with not being able to make sense of what is happening in your life or how things got this way? When you feel like you've been doing everything the right way, or most things the right way. Life doesn't let anyone avoid some form of struggle. In my experience, a lot of men and women in the modern day have a struggle that has been hard to see or to anticipate and prepare and be ready for when it comes. And because it's hard to define, it's hard to know when it's already here. Which means it feels like it's too late when we finally see what it's been doing to us. Let me explain. When a big obvious trauma or tragedy takes place, it's visible. And as painful and damaging as it is, it's at least a clear reason to be struggling. But the little underlying things that we collect and carry with us are not so obvious. And they have a way of weighing us down over time and building up and wreaking havoc in their own unpredictable ways if we're not taking time to find them and be aware of them. But the beautiful thing is that this brand of struggling and suffering is something we can do something about, even if it has already boxed us in. I've had several moments of peak success and falls from grace and moments of despair on my journey. Well, I know. We all go through it in different ways, but I'm giving you this as context because on this last rodeo, as I wrapped up being in my 30-year decade, my 30s, I was dealing with all sorts of challenges. And some were new, some were old demons that I thought I could keep around just for when I needed them. And I was just so confused and lost and frankly, just deeply unhappy. I was feeling mistreated and bitter, but I was having trouble admitting to myself that this was my underlying mental state. It's a feeling of fatigue that you can't really sleep off. But maybe on the outside, it's hard to tell, right? Because it made no sense to me why I was feeling that way, as I was having a lot of personal and professional success. And yeah, I had a few traumas and defeats and losses, but for the most part, I had so much to be grateful for. If I just look back to all that had come my way in the last 10 years. Like when I was 30, it was, if I were to compare that to when I was coming up on 40, a lot had happened, a lot had changed. You know, I had a decent house in the country, in the suburbs, and I got a nice yard, and I was able to buy some of the manly toys I always wanted to get. And Been working on getting my garage decked out for my hobbies. And more importantly, I've been married to my wife for 16 years. My beautiful wife, with her 3 sweet kids growing up and developing well with no major health issues, no money worries to speak of, all sorts of modern luxuries and conveniences. I finally had reached that salary and pay scale milestones that I had a clear path to comfortable and a straightforward upward trajectory in my career and really start accelerating, growing my nest egg and start going on nice vacations now and building for a solid retirement, right? I was even helping my friends when they needed a little cash, and I was going to church and praying every day. I had no substance abuse addictions other than unhealthy food and energy drinks, which obviously I found out that those are no small addiction. But relatively speaking, I should be pretty happy with myself, my life, and progress and accomplishments. I was thinking, I've arrived at a new level. I know what I'm expected to do next. Climb the ladder and keep making more money with bigger and bigger sales by taking on more hours and responsibility and move to middle management or switch companies and level up my title and salary and keep advancing comfortably for the next 20 to 30 years on the prescribed path. But the more I tried to convince myself that all was good and not to question it, the more I felt like I was drinking poison and pretending it was water. Like all was right and planned out and I was on the right path, but my soul was like, that's not true. And I couldn't explain why. I felt guilty for feeling that way. I tried to just get my head right and be grateful. But it felt like I was cheating at solitaire. And I was ashamed of myself for insisting on drowning out the truth. On the outside, again, everything looked like a life that others would love to have. But in reality, everything felt completely off. My marriage and relationship with my wife seemed really out of whack. Like we were trying to connect, but we just weren't speaking the same language anymore. I felt so uneasy inside, like every day was breaking me down more and more in some unexplainable way. But I had to pretend, just get over that next hurdle in the game plan and all would be well. People were counting on me to get it together and keep it together. But I'd become more irritable and defensive than ever, although I wouldn't own up to that. I'd saying that it was just in response to how others were acting and they were the ones who needed to fix themselves. Anytime any sort of feedback came my way, I was reading into it as having the most selfish and worst possible intent. Just kind of felt like, don't you see how hard I am trying? I was taking things personal because sometimes they were, but I had forgotten that I had any other option than to take it personal. And I just kept telling myself I just need to get organized and buckle down and work harder. And after I went through this whole quest, after I figured some of this out through different channels, a mentor of mine later literally said to me, as guys, we tend to turn to work to try to fix broken things, but ignoring the problem and working harder just breaks them more. And he was right. Just looking back, like the harder I worked, the worse I felt. The more I tried to get appreciation by making others' lives better or helping them with their urgent need or being a good employee, the more I started to feel like life is just not fair. I felt justified in blaming others because they were taking advantage of my helpfulness and generosity and my skill set to make their own lives easier and advance themselves. And now it's just kind of like the wreckage in the wake. But to be clear, that was a lot of negativity. Not every second of my life was horrible. I was having good days and making good memories, but the overarching default state, my mind was shifting more and more from an overall life of joy and connection to this feeling of dread and disappointment. Like, is this all there is for me? I just need to be a martyr and make others' lives good, and then maybe my wife and children will be happier. But that seemed to not be happening either because I was not bringing the best version of myself, even though I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to. And I've always been a person who seeks to be optimistic and positive, but this cycle started to alter my view of the world as a selfish and ugly place. It was only getting worse and more evil and unfair. I was shifting to this feeling of needing to shrink back and protect myself by jumping at every opportunity to stand up for myself and call out the injustices and lies. Like I had to change the tide, whatever it took. I'd given enough. I needed to force a change to happen in a more effective way. Like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Was kind of how I was feeling. And I was isolating myself mentally in a way probably only God could see. I was like, how on earth did I get here? What has happened to the world around me? I did not feel like the man that I had once been or that I hoped I would be becoming at this point. I felt like I was letting everyone down around me, and then I made that a reality, not just a thought, by just extending all the isolation and that I'd gotten used to from during the pandemic years. Like I just kind of just was like, let's just keep this thing going, even though everybody's, coming back together. And like I kept having a little progress and seeing some hope, but then others around me were not feeling it. And they're saying I was still not pulling my weight or showing up how they had hoped. And then it did get to a point where I had exhausted my ability to keep going the same direction in the same way. So thank heavens for that, because then I did what I always do when I feel like I tried everything I thought was supposed to work. I pulled away and I got super curious. I was like, all right, let's just explore some possibilities. What has changed? What did I used to do that I no longer do? What have I added that could be making this harder than it needs to be? What has changed with the people around me that isn't the same anymore, that I have not maybe accounted for? Am I expecting them to behave the same when their world has changed? I don't feel like I'm set in my ways or that I'm not adapting. So what's going on here? I was like a mad scientist just experimenting with as many possibilities as I could. And that led me down so many rabbit holes and a lot of dead ends. So I was learning and figuring things out, but it was not going as fast as I wanted it to get to sort of the essence of what needed to happen. And all the answers I was finding seemed to be pieces to the puzzle or fragments of a solution, but I couldn't get them to fit together in any meaningful way, shape, or form. And then I stopped and I said, okay. I asked myself, when have I felt this way before? What were the conditions? And then it came to me. It's like, oh, I think I see it. I'm trying to rely all on myself to make this right. I can't do this by myself. And for some, that might be turning to someone to help them. For me, I turned to God and I said, I need help. I thought I could figure this out on my own, but it's just not happening. I know. This is a pattern. You help me and you guide me and you send me good people and guides and mentors and coaches and connections and friends and real leaders and inspiration at the perfect moments. And like a symphony, things start to all fall into place. And then I think I can just finish turning it into a masterpiece by myself. Which parts am I missing? I'm ready for your perspective now. And the inspiration that I got was, you have a lot of the right pieces and the effort is there, but you're building it upside down. It won't stay standing like that, no matter how organized it looks or feels. And that's when I realized that fixing this, it was going to take some time. And I needed to create space and open my heart and mind to how I should be building this right side up and who I needed to have on my team permanently. And for me, obviously that included God, but also who else should be a part of this? Who should I ask for help now in what areas? And that has fundamentally changed my life. And on the next episode, I'm excited to share what building life upside down looks like and how I'm eager to work with you to put it right side up, not just for yourself, but everyone else. Life has to happen together. It's designed that way. Go get 'em. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode. I love the chance to make your day better in some way, whether that ends up being just a quick reset that you needed to change things up, or even just a laugh or some fresh perspective. If you're getting value out of it, can you please do me a favor and share it with someone else? Because as more people find and listen to the show, I'm able to bring more good stuff more often. It is the fuel to the bonfire. Also, I'd love to hear your feedback and any thoughts or ideas or questions you have so we can be more connected and make the show even better with your input and your inspiration. The quickest way to do that is to send a message to my Instagram handle at wayofthebonfire, which is also included in the show notes. And if you just want to avoid accidentally scrolling on social media, you can send me an email at nate@wayofthebonfire.com. And you know it, but make sure you click that follow button so you can catch new episodes as soon as they're available. Keep tending the bonfire, and we'll see you on the next one.